Now I'm already freezing myself. So that's going to be an interesting first few, but here we are back again. I hope so, at least. 2 hours sales preparation time. International one, it moved to a new time. We're still on Thursday, but we are at 6 p.m. Since it's a national time zone, we got asked that the Thursday morning is not the ideal place, and then people wanted to join, and I thought, why not? So we have one at 9:30 a.m. in Germany, in German, not in Germany, it's all around the world. As a start into the Euro sales week, and then we have kind of an end of the week Thursday sales preparation time. If you follow us on Instagram, especially the Feminist Economy account, you have seen the post with the yeah cup. Yes, there is still a cup. Considering it's 6 p.m. and sometimes you read that I spent quite some time in London, and I can be a little bit London posh, so it's afternoon tea. It's a very good Earl Grey, which I'm probably have to rationalize because I'm not coming to England or so we have to figure that one out. But here we are, back again, me rattling around my tea or any kind of drink I have. Probably I should have another drink. We will figure that one out. So welcome back, sales preparation time, another round of dirty sales tricks. So if you follow both episodes of both series, you know we wrapped up the German version already, but we have still some way to go on the English speaking part, or just like on the English version, and that's what we here are for tonight. Another round of a dirty sales tricks, and one you probably have fallen trap into. And one which is extremely well used, and in the high points of every selling especially, it's the just say yes. The just say yes technique consists of different parts. So there is a certain kind of set of questions you ask, but there's also certain kinds of actions you let your client take. So we will look at everything. As every dirty sales trick, I'm also explaining you the parts of the psychology and the target group as always. So the say yes technique is one of the broadest targets group there is. You have to be human. That's kind of all you have to be. It's one of the baseline, deep rooted behavioral techniques you can use. The question is always, should you? And if you should, how much of you should use? The poison, what was the dose of poison? So the say yes technique is rooted in our brains that we want to say yes to things. I think every one of us already had that problem, that saying no sometimes is really, really exhausting. Either not saying no to like you get more work on your desk, or just say no to the dessert. So it's not something which is really hardwired in us, saying no to stuff. So what we are hardwired to is saying yes to stuff. And that's why the saying yes technique is for literally everyone usable. If you're a human, if you something else, it even works quite good on neurodiversity brains. Probably not so much on mine, but I'm not quite sure if that's an autistic trait. I think it's an autistic trait because the legendary story goes, my first word wasn't mom or dad, it was no. And it still seems to be one of my most used words, but my most favorite words, but it works for everyone. So we're deeply rooted to say yes. Why? Because we're relationship-driven brains. We're relationship-driven humans, both brains and humans. And so it works for everyone. And there's a special technique in a rhetorical technique so that you, as soon as you start that people say yes to stuff, and bring them down a certain kind of road, they say yes even more. There is, if you ever went to a speaking event or any kind of speaker speaking to you from a stage, especially someone's trained in the US, there was like the 3 questions and everyone is answering them with yes. That's a hardcore sales technique. We always make in the speak to sell very jokingly, just ask how many people breathe in here, and then everyone has to say, yes, I'm breathing. Yeah, that's kind of like the deep-rooted saying yes technique. So the rhetorical thing you use for it is a question where the chances that everyone has to answer with yes is high in the means. So you can optimize these question techniques. Think about you want to sell something from stage. Let's tell you why that's probably a bad idea to use that example. But if you want to open up your speech with, does everyone drink in here coffee? And most people will answer yes, because most people drink at least partly any kind of coffee. If you start out with a little even more general questions, who loves a good hot beverage, tea, coffee, or a hot cocoa? Nearly 100% of every people community say yes. You can also use that technique if you ask people who ever had like a Coca-Cola or went to IKEA or stuff like that, because people, we know that mass markets, people went to that. So you start them out with saying yes to something. And the technique is you start very broad, very abstract, so that everyone can say yes, and then you move them into your special need where you want to say them yes, so probably in the end to your product, which doesn't have to have anything with your opening question. That's why it literally works if you ask people, who's in here breathing? Raise your hand. And there's where technique 2 comes in. The yes technique becomes more forceful, more powerful, more dirty if it's not only about that people say yes in their head. The second most important part is that they either say it out loud. If you ever watch the show Say Yes to the Dress, the bride has to then is asked, and now is that your dress? Do you say yes to the dress? And she has to pronounce it very loud that it's now her dress. If she will figure out that she probably afterwards, like that she was pressured into a situation not happy around with that dress, she will not come out of that. Why? Because it's, again, if you say yes loud to especially other people, you're in a social contract. To break that social contract is very hard. So what you want people, if you use that dirty sales trick, or what you normally get used to, is either say it loud, yes, out loud, or you have to raise your hand or do anything. And now we're at a part where probably everyone of us already had that weird experience where you kind of like signing things. Yeah, so if you ever wanted to kind of go into insurance or any kind of banking product or so, you all have to sign stuff. And it's often presented that it's necessary even that you start out, yes, are you? And then you have to fill out a form and you're like, why? You already have that data. And of course, there's something called GDPR and you have to sign up and stuff, but there's also, it's a very powerful technique. If you fill out, say yes to that form, yes, I'm informed, I'm here on my free will, it brings your brain into that hardwired situation. So it's not only the rhetorical thought, but it's saying out loud or motion-based, and you're now in a state where to break that cycle of yeses is very hard. Remember, we're already hardwired to say yes to stuff. And now we are enforced to say yes to that. That's why a third part comes into, it's the social pressure, social contract thing. What is a social contract, first of all? A social contract, not contact, that's kind of Corona stuff. Contract, the contract. And the social contract is that as soon as we establish something as a social construct, that we are a group, a community, a tribe, we signing all off on a social contract. So let's say we are at a big event. Let's say 5,000 people in, doesn't matter if virtual or offline room. There's a reason why politicians, and especially some kind of politicians, love big crowds and have them together in a crowd. And the more people there are, the more force is behind the social contract. As soon as, and I told you that in another dirty sales trick already, 5 people say even to bullshit, yes, or if an obvious lie, it's very hard to say no to that. So that starts at 5 people. Now think about 50, 500, or in my example, 5,000 people going into a very cheery mode and saying yes. So it's a very easy, say yes to lowering the taxes, say yes to lose your weight. You see how that works? So of course, who never, I really don't know anyone who's like, yeah, everyone's making jokes about like losing weight or wanting to have more money in the bank. It's a classical thing. Of course, we all want that. So saying yes to that is very easy and very forceful. And the bigger and more forceful the social contracts are, the more harder is it to get out of line. So it's going from social contract into a deep-rooted social pressure situation. You are there willingly, that's not the big problem, but your hard-wired brain for yeses now wants to please yourself, don't break the contract with yourself and all the surrounding of yours. So that's where the third part comes in. The more people, and it doesn't matter if it's virtual or offline, just told you that, are saying yes to something, the harder it is for you to say no, or I'm not happy with it. And then there is a very dirty sales trick. It's like people tell you, like especially selling from the stages, the big VIP programs. Yeah, you probably have seen that, been to them, or hopefully not bought one. It's a classic construct that people are the first movers and normally not real clients. It's not illegal and the most around the world, but it pressures up the social contract of the yes and the social contract and group pressure in it. So saying yes is one good technique that to confirm, like especially if you would advise you in saying yes to stuff if you have like problems with accountability in your appointments and stuff like that, it makes a hell lot of sense to have that kind of stuff. But it doesn't make sense to pressure people into saying yes. Why? As every dirty sales trick, there is a downside. And the more pressure points you add to any kind of sale you have, there is the probability of unhappy clients climbing up. And the thing is always, then a client can even be unhappy if your product is good, but he or she will look back and feel pressured into the sales. And that's never a good thing. So adding, and especially adding these high pressure points, so working with the extreme hardwire and using it to an extreme, there will be blowbacks. That's why there are studies on hard sales on telecommunications. So back in the day when we started out, like telecommunications and all the phones and stuff, like there was always a hard sell. I don't know if you can remember, but like there were like lines in every shopping mall and street where you can like sign up for a new telecommunication contract, your new mobile phone contract, and anything else, and you were hard pressured. But the problem was the churn rates were extreme. Churn is nothing else that you do not follow up on the contract, so you bind yourself to 1 or 2 years or even less, and you churn, so you go out of the one contract and go to a new contract. And that's always, if these hard selling techniques are used, the churn rates are extreme. And that's why the saying yes technique is normally, we have seen it using, and that's why I told you that example, now is more used on high selling points. So it's not so much more used than in like a low financial pressure point, but on a high financial pressure point. Why? So that people get not unhappy and stay in the social pressure, because if the more money you spend, and we talk about deep-rooted 5 figures, then they don't tell you it's a bad product. So that's kind of why that works so well. So saying yes, it's an interesting rhetorical technique, which combined with a very motorical, so moving your hand or speaking out loud, is something that people engage very deeply and make them move to do stuff. So saying yes, and that's kind of like an interesting thing, if you do that inside of your product to help people to overcome hurdles and stuff like that, it's a very good thing. So don't let them say no to something, let them say yes to something. It will help them out on their way to a good change for themselves. But on the sales side, if you overuse, like with every dirty sales trick, it gets dirty fast. That's kind of like always the problem with these dirty sales tricks, because if the most people I know either don't do any kind of sales, so they're watching that videos and like, damn, I bought a product based on that, but it's not like the real problem. But some people who like are not very good at sales then try to find a workaround and want to improve their sales, and they find like hard selling and dirty sales techniques, not knowing really sometimes what's going on, and then put them in. And of course, as I always tell you, these dirty sales tricks work, but there's always a price to pay for that. And the price to pay is that your target group, probably your ideal client, will not work well with pressure. They probably won't work well with manipulation. And there's always one thing to consider. If you are not the external sales team for any kind of company, it's also your ethical values as an entrepreneur you're probably selling off. And as soon as you start off in that yes technique and all these technique with like magical blah 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 sentences and stuff, yeah, that's funny. I know we have a real business magic challenge. I know that. I mean, like there are post-its about the magical first sentence or the magical sales copy, or I mean that kind of stuff. It's not, if you like, with a like a raised eyebrow say, yeah, we have a real business magic challenge, and it's magic, but it's not selling you magic. Just you will see it. It's coming up. It's there. 1st of November. You can start it. But it's kind of that way to figure it out how the sales technique has a certain kind of like, that's how it works. That's if he or she is doing that, that's how it works. And then you're down a road where you use that not knowing that it works against your ideal client, it works against your ethic, and then months down the road you're very unhappy and your sales also will break down, and that's an interesting thing. So the say yes technique, while it's if you, as always, use it wisely and it's fine, overuse any of the dirty sales trick, and we will see the following. Your sales will rise, so revenue will go up. But if a dirty sales trick works against your client and your understanding of the world, you will crumble down because you will tone down your sales. You will go into confusion. You will go into every kind of diversion and coping mechanism. You won't do a good sales job anymore. So while you rise, you also fall down and then you're totally irritated what happened. So that's why I would always advise you, keep every dirty sales trick you even probably now aware of using with a grain of salt and dosage it low. Use a low dosage. And sometimes, and that's why it's so interesting, dirty sales tricks inside of a product, not for sales, but for helping people change, get them better results. That's where a dirty sales trick can be a very interesting concept to use. So I hope it helped you to see the world of the sales again a little bit differently. It was me and my cup of tea tonight. We will see each other again next Thursday live at 6 p.m. German speaking crowd, we see each other again on Tuesday 9:30 and as always on a Wednesday 8:30 a.m. also for the Good Morning Show. And since the long awaited story goes on, yes, still the 1st of November is up, we will have the Real Business Magic Challenge for you in English, followed up by the paid 33 days of inspired action. So yes, we're working on it and it will come up for you. I wish you a great week. Please stay healthy and well, and I hope to see you all soon again. Bye.